Vermin is my president. Vermin is my friend. Vermin is my president. I got a friend in Vermin. Vermin is my president. Vermin is my friend. Vermin is my president.
Yeah! I love that song so much. Once again, a shout out to Monty Oblivion out there in LA who made that wonderful song, and Dave, of course, for slicing together that intro. And of course, welcome. You are live. You are watching Super Tuesdays with Vermin Supreme. I am Vermin Supreme. And of course, this is the weekly or so, every so often weekly Tuesday show where I speak to representatives from various political parties as they grovel for my acceptance as their presidential nomination. And barring that, we definitely find a little bit about these various parties. And tonight's wonderful guest here is Mr. Gus Tatlas. Is that did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did.
All right, cool. I guess I should have asked earlier, but I guess it's very professional to ask it on air also. And Gus Tatlas is a representative, I believe an official representative of the Forward Party. Is that accurate?
Yeah, here in Pennsylvania, I'm a trainer and organizer. I got some leadership roles, but I'm not like part of an executive committee.
No, but they are allowing you to come on and speak to me here this evening. That's you have permission to do so.
I did clear it first.
Okay, you won't get in trouble for appearing on tonight's broadcast.
No, but I've been in trouble before. I'm okay with that.
Very good. So Gus, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, my name's Gus Tatlas. I'm originally from Virginia Beach. Grew up in a military family, and then by no surprise, when I was in my early 20s, I had joined the Navy myself, served for 20 years, retired from the military, but my last duty station was here in Pennsylvania, and we decided to make it home. And then when I retired from the Navy and I was looking for a job in the private sector, and I never had the opportunity to settle down before, never got to develop those community roots. So I started to look into it, and then I started looking at things that are really important to me and trying to figure out how to contribute to my community here. And it became into local politics, and that's how it happened. And neither of the major parties ever really kind of grabbed me. I was considered myself an independent my entire life. So when I did get involved in local politics, I gravitated towards minor parties and independents, and there's more to it, but that's the gist of it.
Okay, and how did you find yourself attracted to finding out more about and ultimately working with the Forward Party? What was there that attracted you?
Well, like I said, I always considered myself an independent. Never been into philosophy or anything like that. I have certain things in government that I would like to be fixed, and I have certain solutions that I think that would work to fix those. So when I was working with other political parties, I'd worked with the Libertarian Party at one point. I worked with the Keystone Party at one point. They were good. They were good fits for a while, but ultimately they were never the perfect fit because in the end, they were more philosophy based and I was more solution oriented. And then here with the Forward Party, when I started meeting with them, and I met with them for like over a year, when I started meeting with them and I started talking with them, the majority of the people who were in leadership positions here in Pennsylvania, we shared the same goals. We shared the same strategy. And I was like, okay, well, this is a great fit. So I want to help here in Pennsylvania to build it into hopefully the next major party in the state of Pennsylvania.
Tell me about the goals as you see them that you have in common with the Forward Party that made it attractive to you.
All right. Well, first of all, the goals are with government reforms that can, well, first and foremost, they help better represent the individual, better represent the people. And then while they're also doing that, they're also helping independents and minor parties to grow in my state. Every state has its own laws. So one thing that might work for Pennsylvania may not work for another state, or it may be already in place in another state. And I'd say one of the biggest things for that is ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is probably one of the most important things to me. And
yeah, me too. I like that. I like that a
right.
lot.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
it is one of the most important things to me. I've seen it in action on lower levels of government throughout our country. The private sector's been using it for a long time. So it's only relatively new to upper levels of government versus you know being a new concept at all. It's far from being a new
Would you
concept.
care to briefly describe ranked choice voting for those of viewers of ours that may not be familiar?
Okay. Well, okay, just to make it as easy, there's different versions, but just the easiest way to explain it. All right, let's say you have 4 people on the ballot, 4 different, we'll call them teams. We got 4 different teams on the ballot. Normally, you'll have the plurality version where you all you go vote for them, and whoever gets the majority of the vote wins, right? So, but the problem that we run into that in our society is the majority of the vote is less than 50%. So do you really want the person to run your country or your town or your state to really have not the support of at least 50% of the people? So the way you do it with ranked choice voting is you take all 4 teams and you say, this is what you want you do. We want every voter to rank them 1 to 4. 1 is your first choice, 4 is your last choice. So you do that. Now it goes up. If any one candidate gets just above 50%, election's over. That person won because they got the majority of the support of the electorate. Now, let's say it's like we've been seeing, where one person gets 48%, another person gets 48%, and then the rest of it's divvied up between minor parties and independents. Well, now what happens is that whoever was the lowest on the vote total, they're eliminated. And if that was your first choice, now it goes to your second choice. So when you ask the average person, if your first choice didn't win and your second choice won, are you really that upset? Probably not, because at least it wasn't your last choice. So now usually it doesn't go past the second try when it comes to like only having 4 people on the ballot. So the second choice person wins. So now you got more than 50%. But here's the best part about it. If you really want to win, you not only have to be someone's first choice, you have to be someone's second choice too, which means you have to be not an extremist. You can't go to the far left or the far right and just use all the the inflammatory language and false promises we've been hearing for the last decade or so. You actually have to go back to say, hey, even if I'm not your first choice, this is why I should be your second choice. So in practice, what we do is we actually get better candidates, less extreme candidates that bring solutions rather than rhetoric. And isn't that what we want? We want people to represent us that actually have solutions the majority of the people already support.
I think we do. If this is to be a representative democracy, I believe that those that represent us in the democracy need to receive the most support. Mm-hmm. And of course, my attraction to ranked choice voting is that it would give me a much better chance, number one. But my problem with ranked choice voting, and it's strictly personal, is that one of my promises has always been that a vote for Vermin Supreme is a vote completely thrown away. And it seems that under the ranked choice of voting, that a vote for me would not necessarily be thrown away. It would simply be rolled over to the next candidate.
Yeah, I can see how that might be something that upsets you. So I would, if it was me, if I was in your position, I'd probably do a little bit of soul searching and see whether or not I would want to evolve from that standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not complaining about people voting for me, and of course, ultimately, I mean, early on, when I was an anarchist, starting, running for office, 30 years ago, it was a slightly moral perplexion where it was like, well, am I encouraging people to vote, and is that a good thing? And at the time, I wasn't convinced that voting was necessarily a good thing or a respectable thing. And I didn't want to be encouraging something that I didn't perceive to be no good. But I have evolved, as you have mentioned. I mean, I believe that many of us politically motivate or change our perspectives throughout the time. And I believe that eventually I came to the conclusion that why the heck not? Why the
Well,
heck not? Indeed.
you made me think of a question. Do you think ranked choice voting would actually encourage more people to vote with more thought versus emotion?
I think it would. I think
Mhm,
people would be more inclined to be more involved and more informed, especially
mhm,
with so many names. Right now, it's oftentimes just somebody just voting straight down the party lines,
mhm,
or voting for a name that they had heard of over some other names, or even a name that they hadn't heard of, that they're just voting for some name because they like the name Dave, for example, and
mhm,
so they vote for Dave. Okay, I'm going to do that. That sounds like a good name. So I do think that the ultimately the ranked choice voting would encourage more engagement with the voter. I would like to think so, and
mhm.
obviously I think you do too, because you're a big promoter of that, and so that is indeed one of the major tenets, also, if not one of the very few platform planks that the forward party maintains.
Yeah, because basically, what we're really looking at is that we have very few platform planks, because the real idea is to bring candidates to people, bring people into the party, to have a free exchange of ideas, of civil ideas. We don't always have to agree on everything, but what we do have to agree on is that we're going to be civil, and that we have some basic um, you know uh, tenets, like what is the ultimate goal? Is it to help make our communities more thriving communities? Is it to make a freer people? And those what we're going to. But as a party, we do not want to dictate everything to the candidates, because in the end, what would work for Philadelphia, Pennsylvania may not work for York, Pennsylvania. And it's up to the candidate to bring that to the people, is really
Yeah.
what it is.
But I will point out that you're not using the phrase "states' rights," for example, as it is often used by some political parties, as a dog whistle to the alt right.
Yeah, I really try to shy away from rhetoric. I mean, because it doesn't. The only thing it does is get people upset and angry, and they donate to the more extreme. So I try my best. I can't say I'm perfect, and I can't say I haven't fallen into the same trap that many of us have. But anything that I refer to as a binary discussion, politically speaking, I try to stay away from it, because I ultimately believe that's what the major parties want us to do. They want us to stick to a binary black and white conversation, and as we all know, there's no solutions there, and it's mostly political theater.
Now, of course, the forward party itself has undergone a fairly large permutation, an evolution, if you will.
Mhm,
And speaking of platforms, I mean, your original platform was very specific.
mhm.
Could you talk about the original party platform of the Ford Party? Uh,
Not for the national,
circa 20,
not
not for, okay.
not for the national, because here's the thing that I think is most important to remember: the Ford Party was just called Ford Party in name at one point. It was a pack. It's this year it's evolving from a pack, right? We have 12 states, and I can't spell them off the top of my head, but you could go to the party website, Ford Party website, and you can find those 12 states. But we actually have 12 states we're considered battleground states, and in those states we are converting everything from a pack to actual party, and that's what we're in the process of doing. Like, we're in the process of doing that here in Pennsylvania. Technically right now we're a political body. We're hoping to be recognized as a minor party by next year here in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's interesting from the earlier positions of the Ford Party. Like I say, they were sort of specific. Obviously the most well known was the Universal Basic Income, UBI, which of
Mhm.
course was a major topic of conversation in larger society, because it was sort of a radical idea in and of its own self. And I think a lot of people very much liked it, and a lot of people really did not like it for various reasons. Also, of course, there was a based economy on human-centered capitalism,
Mhm.
which seemed to imply sort of a kinder, gentler
Mhm.
type of capitalism, and the alternative forms for measuring economic progress. Those
Mhm.
were sort of the basic economic platform of the earlier
Mhm.
version of the Ford Party, and I think they were very attractive to
Mhm.
a certain portion, a very large
Mhm.
portion of the voting public, and equally they were probably despised by an equally an opposite chunk
Mhm.
of the population. Could you just talk about what you believe was meant by that early focus on those type of issues?
Well, I can tell you how a little bit how the evolution happened. Okay, first of all, you got to remember when a lot of that first came out, right? That was with Andrew Yang first getting this movement started, right? So a lot of those were something that came from what his platforms or his ideas were for when he was running for president of the Democratic Party. But as he said himself, it was like, hey, these were ideas. The ultimate goal was what ideas can we do to help get people out of poverty. So when you listen to him and you listen to him on the he even mentioned on the Ford podcast, it was like, hey, when we talked about that, that was an idea. That was one idea. UBI was one idea on the greater conversation on how can we get people out of poverty. Now, one of the ways that it evolved as the Ford Party PAC started gravitating towards, hey, you know what? We have a lot of movement. We actually need to be a political party, right? We need to do that. There was another organization which was formed of Republicans who left the Republican Party when the Republican Party basically when the MAGA element pretty much started running the Republican Party, and a lot of Republicans were unhappy with that. They wanted to go back towards more civil conversations and more collaborative type stuff, and they were forming their own entity. And off the top of my head, I can't remember off I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but I could look it up. And then I can't remember how long ago it was. It was probably, I want to say, at least 6 months ago, maybe even a year ago at this point, where they had said, hey, let's join forces with the Ford Party and become one entity. So now those ideas all came together. So obviously there was going to be people who had different economics leanings that were former Republicans that came in the Ford Party versus a lot of people that were part of Andrew Yang's initial recruitment to the Ford Party. And when they came into it, that's when they started coming with these conversations. It was like, hey, you know what? If we're going to be not like the other parties, there's certain things we just have to leave out of the party's responsibility to make decisions on and leave to the candidates' decisions to sell to the public. Because originally,
So, would you say that the merger with this former Republican group somehow put the kibosh on the talk about kinder capitalism and UBI?
no, there's no kibosh. I mean, the conversations are still
I
there.
mean, the conversations are still
Yeah, but
continuing.
but but as I said, it's not the party is not dictating that. It's up to the candidate. So if you're a candidate and UBI is your thing and you want to run on the Ford Party banner, you can do that, but it's going to be up to you to sell that to your people. You're going to have to plead your case to the people. You're not going to plead your case to the party. And that's where it's very refreshing to me to come into the party as a party organizer and a party activist versus just a person who votes. Is that I don't have the party dictating my values to me. We have a small amount of tenets that we go by, and the rest of it is really up to you as an individual.
Okay.
And it,
What
and
what
it
what
just
are
is,
what are what are those tenets? What is the hard, solid beliefs that you insist on or expect from a candidate that wants to work with you?
right. What I'm going to do so I do not misspeak is I'm going to go straight to the website and and
Fair and
I'm
accurate.
yep. Why'd you do that? Uh, oh no, it's fair and balanced is the other
Ah,
one.
yes.
Yeah. All right. And let's see. And here we go. All right. And all right. Okay, well, the website goes, when you look at it, looks like, okay, the values, right? When you go to the values, one thing it's talking about is bottom up, not top down. Ford empowers leaders to find solutions that work in their communities. And that's exactly what I was talking about, is like the party's not going to come to you. Like if you want to run for, let's say you want to run for a township supervisor in your small town here in Pennsylvania, which I live in. I live in a small little township. There's less people in our township than are on an aircraft carrier. Or let's say you're in a large city like you're in Philadelphia. It's like it's up to you in that community to really say, hey, these are the best solutions for those problems, rather than the party telling you that. Because as we've seen with the major parties, a lot of the solutions the parties push might work somewhere but not everywhere. So we want to avoid that.
And there is a lot to be said, and of course, you can tell a lot about a party by its platform. And some parties' platforms just go on and on and on, and take a position on a whole lot of issues. And but in reality, people don't really even pay attention to that, and the politicians themselves do not really necessarily subscribe to a lot of the idealistic platform planks of their own party, it seems.
Right. Yeah. And so it's like, so as a candidate in that particular case, you're lying to yourself and lying to your own party to try to win the primary. I mean, like that doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? And then also diverse thinking isn't just welcome, it's required. Ford welcomes new ideas, fearless conversations around the issues of the day. It's because we shouldn't be afraid to have these conversations. It's just that you have to have everybody in the conversation has to agree to be civil, and you have to agree that we're all in it together and we're trying to collaborate on those. Because if all it is about trying to prove I'm right, you're wrong, that's about your personal ego. That's not about the people you're trying to represent. So that's one of the things I wanted to get away from, was being in organizations that were more concerned about proving who's right. I personally don't feel the need to be right. I just want to solve the problem.
Well, tell me how a local group would become recognized by the national PAC or party.
Well, in Pennsylvania, like I said, we're getting everything started here. So let's say if you were in a particular county and there was no representation there, you would go ahead and you get organized. We would start having conversation with our regional leadership and see where you fit in there. And as far as being recognized, we're at a state level right now. And we're keeping it because we're such a small party. We're building up, so we're really keeping all the leadership and the majority of the decisions on how we run our infrastructure at the state level. As we grow, you have to start breaking that down into regions and counties and whatnot. But we're not there yet. So right now, at the state level is where the infrastructure is taken care of. But as far as being active in your community, running for office, it's really at this point, if somebody wanted to run for office in the Ford Party, it's just about getting vetted so we can make sure the people that are running under our banner will follow along with these basic tenets. And I think the best one right there is grace and tolerance. Ford believes in approaching one with grace and tolerance, finding ways to pick people back up rather than knock them down. And that being said, we're not going to go back into your Twitter history and see what you did 10 years ago, because I don't, because we're all different people 10 years later. But we're saying is if you're going to be in a leadership position, or if you're going to run as a candidate, if mostly what you're doing on social media is bashing people down and like for example, in my state, when the current senator, former lieutenant governor Fetterman, when he had a stroke, I saw over social media people being the worst they possibly could because they just didn't agree with the man politically.
Yeah, that's some atrocious. That's very atrocious.
Yeah, and if that's the behavior you have, then you're not going to find a home here.
Does the Ford Party govern itself through bylaws
Oh
like
yeah.
that?
Oh yeah, that's required. Yeah, in order to be recognized as a state party, you have to have bylaws
Mhm.
and all the other financial requirements and such.
Yes, I don't know if you have any mechanisms against hostile takeovers, but it's something that you might want to consider if there's a op against your operation, and
Yeah,
things can happen. Take it as someone who is affiliated with the Libertarian Party for a bit. Hostile takeovers can occur when the people organizing it have the deep
yeah,
enough pockets
yeah. I was
to
yeah I
make their
was in the,
move.
yeah I was in the LPPA for 5 years, but I left shortly before what you're talking about. Yeah, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, this is a professional organization. So
Yes, but it's
so we
certainly something to keep in mind.
right.
And yes.
Yeah. Yep. But hey, I appreciate you bringing that up. I really do.
Oh yes, just a little heads up, because it was a crazy thing how it happened over there, and
Mhm.
just the whole saga and story and drama, and indeed once again how a more extreme element came in and took over what was otherwise a fairly mellow organization with some
Well,
very swell
well,
bylaws.
well. I think if you can't abide by grace and the core one of the core planks here being of grace and tolerance, you're probably not going to get into a leadership position in most party. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And so let's say I'm looking at the three priorities that will unite your broad coalition,
Hmm.
and free people,
Hmm.
revitalizing a culture that celebrates difference and individual choice, rejects hate, and removes barriers so that each of us can rise to our full potential. That's very nice. I like that very much. And could you talk a little bit about how you might hope to achieve those goals in the real world by fiat of government, I guess, because ultimately that seems to be the direction that we would be going in with political parties.
Well, and I'm only going to speak to Pennsylvania.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, but like for example, to help doing those things, the individual choice, government reforms is the biggest one here in the state of Pennsylvania. We don't have open primaries, we don't have ranked choice voting, we don't have like a split electoral college like two other states do. So a lot of those government reforms have to happen, so this way the people have more of an individual choice, because right now they just don't. Um, and 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 just that, and I mean, I could, I'm gonna tell you something that you already know is what it comes down to is like those are essential, to give, to expand, you know individual choice in the state.
Okay. Now, rejecting hate. How is that even accomplishable through the political process?
That is something you have to do as a person. I mean,
So
that's
it's.
what it really comes down to.
I mean,
You can't legislate it.
well,
You
would
can't.
it involve things as outline hate speech, for example, abridging the First Amendment
Mhm.
in
And
ways
like I said,
such as that?
like I said,
Um,
you can't legislate it.
so
It has
so
to has
you are against laws that are against hate speech.
I'm not against anything in particular. I'm not a candidate.
All right, but once again, just sort of teasing out what you feel the Forward Party of Pennsylvania
Mhm.
position might be in terms of
Mhm.
legislating speech
Re-
in order
re-
to reject hate. I mean,
remember
rejecting
remember
hate is great,
mhm.
but putting laws out there that ostensibly are against hate is a little trickier thing, and so I'm just trying to get a
Right.
little nuance, a little feel for it.
Remember a little bit earlier when I said one of the things I try my best to consciously do is avoid the binary conversations, that in politics where it's you're either this or you're that.
Yes.
That's one of them, because you're saying you're either for or against legislation on hate speech.
Well, okay. I
That's
didn't mean to
that's a
put it
binary
so
conversation.
starkly. I mean, perhaps I meant to go a little at it that starkly, but I'm also looking for just a more nuanced version. I mean, would your party support? If locally, if I'll throw it out a hypothetical. I know hypotheticals are worth nothing anyway, but let's say that you had a candidate, and you vetted your candidate, seemed like a decent candidate, and for some reason that candidate felt that was a very strong local issue, and they put that forth as a part of their platform or their talking points or whatever. They say, it's like, well, my constituency, my community demands that I put this this on the table, that we reject hate by rejecting hate speech, by legislating against it, for example. Purely hypothetical.
The party would have no opinion on it. That's the candidate's discretion, and that candidate has to justify to their constituents.
Okay. But at what point would it become a problem? I mean, what is the line in the sand?
Well, hopefully we don't get there.
Okay, because I know you're actively trying to avoid the more radical right and the more radical left.
Well,
but, I mean, what if you found yourself with a candidate who just went that direction on you?
Well, here's and again, I'm not trying to not answer your question, but one thing I keep trying to reiterate: the party itself only has a few tenets. The rest of it's up to the candidate. So if you're asking me what would the party do, I couldn't tell you what the party would do. I could tell you what I personally may do as a member of the party or as a constituent or whatever, but that wouldn't be my personal opinion. That'd be my what I might consider doing. I wouldn't be directing the party or demanding that the party does X, Y, or Z. And that's the difference, is that when you go to the party and you try to demand the party does this or that, you're creating a party of extremism, which is what we don't want.
But doesn't that position make it difficult for the average voter to know what your party stands for? If you're not taking positions,
because you got to think about it like this. When I go talk to the average person, I'm not talking the average voter. I'm talking friends, family. When I invite my neighbors over to my house, or they invite me over to their house, and we're around the fire pit and we're having cigars and our favorite whiskey, or whatever, and ultimately sooner or later the conversation of politics comes up. So as a person who's very active in politics, usually when I'm in an environment with friends and family and the conversation of politics comes up, I tend to shut my mouth, because I'm involved in all that, but I want to know what they have to say. I want to know what they're listening to. I want to know what their concerns are. So I listen to them. I don't give them my opinion. I want to hear what they have to say. I want to hear what their concerns are, because when you're involved in politics, like many of us are, you kind of get tunnel vision. I'm trying to avoid that. I do not want to be an echo chamber. Being in an echo chamber is probably the worst thing you could possibly do to yourself, especially in politics and government. And then I can honestly say that's not a conversation that's ever come up from any of the people that I've been around. They don't go into the hypotheticals or the philosophy about hate speech. I personally think most of those conversations are in social media, which I try to spend as little time as possible on.
Okay, let's jump into the number 2 major priority policymaking guideline statement: thriving communities. I think we can all agree that thriving communities is a good thing. Reinvigorate a fair, flourishing economy, an open society where everyone can live a good life and is safe in the places where we learn, work, and live. Now that sounds wonderful, of course, but could you chat a little bit about how they might be accomplished electorally or through governance?
Especially here in Pennsylvania. Absolutely. It's like one of the biggest problems that we have here. And I don't know how many other states are like this, but in Pennsylvania, our schools are primarily funded through through taxes locally versus at the state level. Whereas most other states, it's done at the state level, and then either county tax or whatever is what the augment is. Well, recently our system for that was ruled unconstitutional by the state constitution by the PA Supreme Court. So now it's got to go back to the drawing board. But the reason it is because the way that law was written way back in the day, it did not account for communities that were once rural are now suburban, right? So the funding is not equitable to the growth of that community, and there's a lot of other things like that. So so in the state of Pennsylvania, one of those things could be reform in the proper funding of our school systems, and and get a fair funding formula that works for the majority of the states. And then you can also look at with thriving communities. Right now, I mean, you're talking about all over the country, but we have crises in the housing market, and that crisis in the housing market can be different ways. Like in our cities, one of the problems that we have is that corporations have bought up a lot of the rental properties, and they're always going to be rental properties. And in some other states, they have limitations on that. It's like, hey, you can own rental properties, but only to a certain degree. And so that overinflates the prices in the housing market. But if you go out to the more rural areas, one of the problems we're running into is a lot of people who want to move away to the cities. A lot of people are looking at the areas, and they're trying to rezone certain areas for luxury townhomes. So now the people who have the least that are trying to leave that area and maybe move out to a more rural suburban area can't afford it, or that's no longer an option to them, because these townhomes that could have been affordable, not affordable housing like it was run by a government agency, but just affordable housing for the market in the area, are now luxury. Because of a lack of oversight on that. So there's a lot of different things that can work in different areas, and in other areas those things aren't needed at all, because those communities don't have those problems. There's plenty of space out there. There's very little rentals where, I mean, granted, buying anywhere right now is a chore, but the one thing that we know that is true is that if you're in an area where there's less rentals, but there are properties available to buy, there's more opportunities for everyone. So there's a lot of those little things right here. And then
I mean, it seems like a lot of these issues can be, if not resolved, somehow controlled or through government intervention, through legislation, through zoning, through any number of possible ways. But are there some issues that can be resolved through less regulation or less legislation?
Yeah, it is very situational, because
once again, how do we achieve? How do we get there? How do we find that out? Do we have more commissions? Do we have more advisory committees? More citizens organizations, advisory boards? How do we get there to the point where we find out the solutions that we need to impose, if you will?
I find from my personal experience, because before I got into this side of the fence of politics, I used to work with a lot of local nonprofit activist groups. I find that activist groups do a lot more. One of my favorite ones here in Pennsylvania is March on Harrisburg. I don't personally agree with every single thing they do, but like 99% of it I do. And they are going to get more respect. They're going to get more news hits. They're going to get more they're going to activate more voters than any political organization is going to. And the best thing about them is they'll also influence candidates, because they'll meet with those candidates and say, look, this is what the people want on X issue, whatever that is. And if you want to get reelected, then you need to change your tune. So they do a lot of education, because I think there's this thing that a lot of people have in their head, and I think a lot of us that are involved in politics know that it's not true, but for the average person, maybe they don't, is that the assumption is that if somebody is running for office and they get elected to office, especially a legislator, state legislator, that they are the subject matter expert on everything. And that could not be further from the truth. There are people just like you and I are people. Not a single one of us can be the subject matter expert on everything. That's just not possible.
So,
So
does the Forward Party interface with and work regularly, or do they try actually actively reach out to other activist organizations when they're finding out what community concerns are?
I can say I do personally. I'm not going to say it's a party function; it's a personal function. And there's quite a few people that are on the leadership committee for the party here in Pennsylvania that are also working with activist groups and nonprofits, and a lot of them came from those. They were attracted to the Forward Party because the Forward Party was wanted to represent and find candidates for the issues that they are passionate about in the parties that they're involved in.
I mean, can I ask you if you believe that the activist is more active or accomplishing more than the political party? Why the Forward Party as a political party instead of Forward, the activist group?
You already have activist group. Why duplicate it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
argue that there's also plenty of political parties. So why become another third party?
Because right now those parties aren't championing those issues, but they can. Because you got to remember, that's the other thing about the Forward Party that I think is a little different from the other minor parties that I've been involved with, is since we're not philosophy based and we're more based on solutions and trying to get things done. We're not sitting here saying, okay, well, if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, you can't be affiliated with the Forward Party at all. No, that's wrong. We actually want to where we're not running a candidate.
Mm-hmm.
We are looking for current legislators that are sitting there that are already champions of these issues, and we're going to endorse them, because they are championing the issues that are most important to us, right? Well, I mean, why would I run a candidate?
That's all on all case by case,
case by case basis,
all vetted, everything vetted.
Yep, case by case basis, vetted by committees, meeting. There's definitely gonna be meetings by professionals or organizations to make sure that, hey, if the Forward Party would endorse this candidate, or if we really respect that candidate enough, we're not even going to ask them to leave their party. We'd say, hey, we're not going to ask you to leave your party, because we understand we got to give you a reason to, right? Because because especially for people in office, one of the reasons why they are Republicans or Democrats is because they have the infrastructure for them to get there. So if we want them to go from being an RRD to coming over to us, we have to build our party to the point where that gives them a reason to.
So are you saying that the Forward Party, you're not saying that they would endorse other party candidates?
No, if we're not going to run somebody in an election, and that person,
you will sell them your mailing list, yes?
No, I don't think it works that way. No, no. If honestly, they'll have a bigger mailing list than we do. But no. If there's a candidate that we support because they follow just because we have shared ideals, and they're going to help implement something like ranked choice voting, or help us with ballot access, so this way we can actually become another major party in Pennsylvania.
Little quid pro quo. I like it. A little quid pro quo. Yeah,
everything is about a mutually everything is about a mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah, of course.
Right. But if fundamentally we agree, then we will absolutely make an announcement saying, hey, we're endorsing this candidate for the Forward Party. We're not going to run anyone against them, because there's already someone supporting our ideals. But that doesn't mean we're not running candidates.
Right. No, that's very good. Thank you. And I also want to jump to the end of the Thriving Communities statement, where everyone can live a good life and is safe in the places where we learn, work, and live. Safety, of course, means many things to many people. environmental justice, safe workplaces, and all
Clean
those
water.
things,
Mm.
clean water. But also, I think some might interpret that as a gun control, a code phrase for gun control, quite frankly. And I was wondering if it was meant as such or intended as such, or if once again it doesn't matter because it would all be up to the local candidate who would decide that they supported Second Amendment rights or versus gun control, or the other way around.
Yeah, I would say that that's situational and depends on the candidate because I mean personally I mean what I say and I say what I mean. I don't speak in code. I don't do that. It's counterproductive. It didn't work. It wouldn't have worked in my military career, and it
Mhm.
doesn't work. It wouldn't work in my professional career.
No, I hope
Yeah.
you don't mind me saying so, but I think I'm making the Forward Party sound a little wishy washy. That's not really my intent, but I think that's how it
No,
might be
and I
sounding a little
understand
bit.
that, and I completely understand that many people might feel that way because a lot of people are more philosophy driven. They want something. They want a candidate or a party that is like they draw that line in the sand. I'm sorry, I'm not going to draw that line in the sand. I mean, there's some basic guidelines that like, you don't cross, and that's about it. You know,
Yes.
and
I
if
mean,
if
I guess wishy washy is better than flip floppy.
well,
I
but then again, if it was going to be called wishy-washy or flip-floppy, that would be the candidate.
Yes, ultimately,
Yeah.
giving you some good uh, strategic deniability there. So yeah, that's good. That's good. I like
Well,
that.
it's good. I'm not in charge of anything, so I don't need deniability.
And tell me about Andrew Yang. Do you know him?
I met him once for like 5 seconds. I can't
Mhm.
profess that I know him.
Mm.
I just listened to I listened to as many Andrew Yang speeches as I've listened to, Gary Johnson speeches, or I've listened to Jordan Peterson speeches. So it is what it is. I got to meet him for a second. You've obviously met him more often than I have, but
Yeah.
yeah, but from what I've gotten off him from just the very very brief encounters is where he's at where most of us here in Forward Party are at is that we're trying to build something new. It's going to evolve as it goes, but we're trying to build something new. We're trying to stay away from the extremism that found its way into the other parties. We're trying to bring people together for actionable solutions and actually get shit done versus the rhetoric.
Seems like a very dedicated man, and I
He
did have
does.
that amazing encounter with him up in New Hampshire, where I actually was able to.
Mhm.
I had taken $130 of my campaign money in a
Mhm.
perfectly legitimate campaign expense, autographed every dollar bill, handed them out to the crowd at the arcade where he was giving his speech, and where he was
Mhm.
kind enough to do the photo op with my book, I Pony Blueprint for New America.
Mhm.
And yes, and then as he was leaving, I made it rain on Andrew Yang, and he was a very good sport about it. I believe he very much enjoyed it. Whereas Rod Webber was there, and he went to a considerably darker place, asking Andrew, "What are you going to do if you get elected?" And the CIA shows you the alternate angle of the Zapruder film. Um, that was a little scary for me. But yes, he seemed like a very
Mhm.
nice man for sure, and definitely inspired a lot of young people, and
Mhm.
inspired some activists, and inspired people like yourself to actually take it a step further, if you will. Make
Mhm.
it something bigger than just one individual, because so many vanity political parties, I'm thinking LaRouche or something, get quite culty and stuff. But yes, Andrew Yang, and not to imply anything by that at all. By bringing up LaRouche, because quite frankly, it's the Libertarian Party currently that has more connections to LaRouche than anybody else.
I can
Uh,
personally say I have no idea who that is.
oh well.
No clue.
Oh my goodness, he was a total insane wingnut. He ran as a Democrat for many years,
Mhm.
and he was putting forth really crazy conspiracy shit before conspiracy shit was even widely accepted. And he was all about the Queen of England was a drug dealer and ultimately a full-on madman. Look him up. His legacy lives on in his cult-like legacy. And for some reason, the Libertarian Party chairwoman seems to have some weird connections with them. But yeah, but we're here to talk about you and the Forward Party, because the Forward Party is a topic of discussion. But I'm sorry, sometimes I play
hey, it's good.
inside baseball base, and
I really think these conversations should be organic and rather than scripted. So you're not going to offend me at all if we get off subject for a second or two. It doesn't bother me.
No, sure, not at all, not at all. So. What else is going on? What do you see? What do you vision for a future of America in the Forward Party? What would America look like under the Forward Party's ironclad control?
Well, that'd be really difficult, because it's kind of hard to have an ironclad control when you don't want to have an ironclad control. Honestly, personally, in the way that we're all talking about it, we want to go. We want to go to a point where in different moments in our history where it wasn't really about party. It was more about regional representation, making sure that everyone is represented, and having selfless leaders. Like for example, do you remember a time where a South Carolina Democrat and a California Democrat were two completely different people? And let's say, New Hampshire Republican.
I'd never seen them together.
Well, you get my point. They would have very little in common. And let's say you're a New Hampshire Republican, and a Texas Republican would have probably had very little in common. And as things moved on, and political parties said, hey, you know what? It's more about branding. It's about sending a message, because it's about donations, because we need the money in order to get the candidates, and so on and so on. So it's that's really where our politics has evolved. It's evolved from back in the day, politicians were some of the most boring people. We need politicians to be boring again, because boring people get work done. And now it's a cult of personality. So we're looking for people who have the most charisma, or the most exciting, but are the least effective.
I'm there. Yeah. You're saying those are desirable qualities for your candidate that you're looking for? I'm right here.
Well, least effective is not my most desirable. But
no, not least effective. I mean, granted, it's low stakes, but
that's what we're trying to get to again. I'm not saying that everybody has to be boring, but I'm just saying is that we need serious people who won't be that.
I'm a very serious candidate. Very serious.
There won't be those people who that the only thing they care about is being as sensational as possible to put more money in their coffers, but they're not going to be about but they don't really care about getting the job done. We want people that want to get the job done.
So spend a few minutes telling me why I would probably be the best candidate that the Forward Party could field in Pennsylvania, of course, and yes, and let's say make it statewide.
You wouldn't, because you're in New Hampshire.
Well, no, I can easily have a post office box in Pennsylvania. I have friends there. I can pretend to live in their basement, much like Mitt Romney pretended to live in his son's dorm room, or much like
let's say hypothetically that you lived in Pennsylvania.
Okay, let's say that. I mean, I could move there.
Hypothetically, you're a Pennsylvania native. Well, you don't.
I have a van. I could live there. Right. I could live anywhere.
Hypothetically, you live in Pennsylvania, right? Well, first of all, we would go through the vetting process, and then we would ask you, what is it you want to do? What are your goals? What do you want to achieve?
I want to do what's best for the Forward Party.
Well, you want to do what's best for the people.
I mean, yeah, the people. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Thank you for coaching me on this interview. I want to do what is best for the people of Pennsylvania, all of it.
Okay. All right. So then we would have a committee sit down with you and see what your plan is. And I
need a plan. I have a plan. Ponies, zombies. It's all good. It's impeccable.
Right. All right. So we would go all through that and see what you're a good fit for and what you may not be a good fit for. And if you weren't a
Wait
good
a
fit,
minute. What are you implying here? What are you saying?
well, I there's this thing
I
that
mean,
that I've said.
state rep is fine, but I'd much rather be a senator or a congressperson.
Well, one of the things that I've always said, being involved in minor party politics for a while, is the best way to kind of get burnt out is doing too many things at the same time. So if you're trying to be a candidate, if you're trying to be an organizer, if you're trying to manage infrastructure, social media, whatever, you're going to burn out. So if we went through the vetting process and the vetting process said, hey, you may not be right for us as a candidate, but we might be able to use you as an organizer, or we might be able to be good at public outreach. You might be great at managing social media, so on and so on. We would have those conversations to see where your fit is within the party. And if you're not a good fit, a good fit for the party,
I like the brush off pivot. No, that's very. I like it a lot.
right.
It's
No,
important.
you have to get I don't know you well, although I do have family in New England. So the next time I'm in New England, I might come by and visit you.
Oh, please do. Verm Largo. I have an 18-hole mini putt golf course in the woods. It's one of the finest mini putt deep woods golf course on the entire Eastern Seaboard, if not all the way to the Mississippi.
That would work perfect for me because regular golf, my drive sucks. So I'd be much better at mini golf.
And a lot of very important discussions take place at Verm Largo. Let me tell you.
Sure, they do. I don't doubt you.
No, that's good. I'm glad. I appreciate that, sir.
I've always been curious. Like when you're braiding the pony's tail, is it better due to a traditional braid or a Dutch braid?
Once again, it comes down to personal preference and the desire to help the people of Pennsylvania make the right choices in their lives.
All right, that makes sense. I'm making
note
of that for the committee.
The Amish are a very esteemed pony-based economy. I understand there is a lot of Amish people in the great state of Pennsylvania. I've seen them. I've spent time with them. Well, okay, I shopped at their stores. I didn't spend a lot of time with them. But nonetheless, I think they are on to something. And I think that just their general lifestyle could probably teach a lot about other than their fundamental religious shit. But
they do a lot of work in construction in the area, a lot of stick building. I assume you know what I meant by stick building when it comes to construction.
Yes, raising barns and things like that. Stick barns.
They do. They get hired by a lot of the developers in the area to do the framing for communities. They do excellent work.
I am sure they do. They are an amazing people, and they're pretty far out. So and they love their horses. They love their ponies, and for sure.
I'd assume I've only seen them in trucks.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, when you're out here in the construction area.
Right. Sure. They could be Jack Mormons or Jack Amish. I don't know what the equivalent is.
Although in Lancaster County, I did pass, I want to say 7 buggies in 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. All right. Well, it looks like we are rolling up to the end of the hour. I think. Actually, 50. Yeah, we totally are. We totally are. And so, Gus, I wanted to thank you very, very much for coming on to this very exciting episode of Super Tuesdays. And I think we learned quite a bit about the Ford Party, and I definitely learned a good chunk, and I know a lot more about it than I did going in. So, and I trust my audience has too. So, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invitation.
Indeed. And one of these days, me and you will get a hold of Andrew Yang, and we will make it rain, and we will party down, and we will keep on moving forward, not left, not right, but I sort of am all about the twirling and twisting and zigzagging and up and down. But
I can't do that anymore unless I'm going to end up in my doctor's office. I'm not as flexible as I used to be.
I hear you. All righty. Well, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in to this week's exciting, informative, and edifying edition of Super Tuesdays with Vermin Supreme. And next week, I'm not sure who we have lined up, but we will let you know for sure when we know. And it's going to be a bang-up episode. And it's wonderful thing. Every week's a little different. Every week's a little different. It sort of depends who the guest is and where things go and like that. But I like the way that things went here today. And have a wonderful day. And don't forget, kids, tune in to High Noon with Vermin Supreme every Saturday at noon on YouTube and Sunday on Twitch and all the things. And of course, vermin2024.com. Come and buy my merch. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful day. Have a beautiful night. And Dave, I guess we're at an hour, and you can play the credits and roll us out and act a little animated, Gus. Wave your hands, and we'll cut you into next week's intro and outro.
Vermin is my president. Vermin is my friend. Vermin is my president. I got a friend in Vermin. Vermin is my president. Vermin is my friend.